Hello everyone, welcome back. So now we're going to take a look at the cliff integration and shading, and I have imported the geometry. I have a low res version here and the high res version, and the low res I'm going to use to get the preview in when we do the instancing in the viewport, so it's faster to work with. Maybe we can even reduce this further because I'll need only need proxy version of this, and then the high res is what we're going to shade and render. So let's create a new camera and call this look dev, and I'm gonna frame the cliff, something like that, and let's go and create a shader, and let's hide the ship. And let's make sure, it's fine. We don't have to zero it out. Let's create a shader, and I'm gonna copy the ship, call this rock or sharp cliff, and I just need let's change this to blue while we have it, and I'm gonna load in a texture that I have. And let's take a look at this texture. And I believe it downloaded this from Megascan or textures.com. I do not remember the sort. I think it's from textures.com. They have nice rocks, and I'm going to use this one. Now this object doesn't have UV coordinates, so I'm going to use something called a triplanar that will use the normals and generate colors based on that. So let's take a look at this directly. We don't need any shading. And I'm going to go to the out context, and I prefer and like to use specific object naming. So this is sharp main, that's the name of the rock element that I made. And let's take a look. Should probably lower the settings. And let's make sure we're looking through the look dev can. And I don't think we've assigned the shader yet, so let's verify this. Sharp cliff, and that's our cliff. Let's hit render. Okay, everything's working. I'm going to disable the environment light from the viewport so it's faster to render, and let's go back to the shader, and here I'm gonna load the texture. So RS texture node, and I'm gonna go for the image X. Should probably use all of them. Okay, let's take a look. So we can specify, because this generates texture based on the normals, we can specify which normal to use, which direction to use. Right now it says same image on each axis, so we just need to plug one of them, and it's going to use it for all the other nodes, for all the other inputs. So let's click on the play button and get the interactive rendering. And I'm not looking to do anything fancy here, just get some nice diffuse and some bump, that's all. I'm gonna lower the scale, something like that, and that's pretty much it. Let's connect this through the diffuse. And let's connect this, and let's look through the OCIO setup. And as you can see, the textures is pretty dark with our environment. So I'm going to use a color correct node and increase the gamma 1.25, maybe 1.5, and we can increase the exposure of the texture as well. And let's desaturate this a bit, something like that. And I'm going to use the same texture to also generate bump. So I'm going to connect a bump node, bump map, and let's connect this. And the way I like to see bump is not through the diffuse, because it's hard to tell through the diffuse component. So what I'd like to do is to make this very reflective. It was already very reflective. Should see a reflection. Okay, let's reduce the amount of bump. Yeah, so 0 reflection, and let's gain this up so you can see clear reflection there. And as we start to increase the bump, we will be able to tell quickly with our reflection. We can even use a roughness of 0. It's already a roughness of 0, so this is going to show us exactly what happens with the bump. So let's try 0.05. That's already too much. The bump has broken up too much. Maybe 0.4. Let's try 0.25, something like that. And I'm going to use the same information to also change the roughness based on this map. So I'm going to use a fit range or RS change range and use these colors. So their current value, let's assume they go from 0 to 1, and I want the reflection roughness to go between 0.3 and 0.6. And I'm going to use that reflection roughness here. I'm going to set it to be between 0.3 and 0.6, and it will be driven based on the map, so we get nice variation. And let's introduce back the diffuse. I don't want 100% diffuse. I'm going to set it to 0.8 and the reflection to 0.7. I'm going to increase the roughness because it's a big cliff, so we don't get a perfect diffuse. It's more a Lambertian law. So I'm going to set this to 0.3, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, we think we were not seeing through the... Yeah, you hate this because when you switch like this, it doesn't load the OCIO straight away, and that's confusing. So now I have to tweak the colors back again. Let's scale them to 1. Okay, let's leave it at that. And that's pretty much it in terms of shading. We can use an RS curvature node to get some more variation. So for example, I can use this RS change node, change range, and I can decrease the amount of diffuse where it's where these values are darker. So let's connect this to the RS diffuse weight. I'm gonna say it goes between 0 and 1, and the new range for the diffuse is 0.5 and 1. So now we're gonna get a nice curvature in there. We can tweak the curvature to only capture small radius areas like this. But again, this is a big cliff, so I'm fine with something like this, just to get some variation, that's all. Okay, let's connect that, and let's increase this and turn on consider same object only, because if we have other objects, they may be used to change the shading of that. We don't want this. We want it to be considered by itself. And that's pretty much it for shading this. We can look at the reflection, which is, I believe, very weak, or we don't have a lot of self-reflection. And then we have the specular, which is the reflection of the environment, and that's working pretty well.